we're back, and we are, of course, joined in studio this morning, in case you're just joining us, by Amir Abdullahi, National Chair, ANC Youth League, Lydia Mathia, Youth Development Expert, and Suleiman Bashir, who is an advocate. And we are looking around issues to do with the youth and politics ahead of the August polls, whether, of course, the youth have the power to sway electoral outcomes, why they did not register to vote. And I'll read out some of your comments. Engineer Lazaro Kanyambok, you're saying the youth are the majority. That's why their numbers are so crucial to both leading coalitions. Somebody here is saying the youth at the moment are not working hard politically. They want to be given political seats without working hard to acquire those seats. It's high time the youth worked hard to change the scenario in order to venture into politics. And of course, somebody else here saying the youth don't believe in themselves. That's why they keep on supporting and voting for the older generation. They do not stand a chance. They can change their mind the last minute because of handouts. Youth should be focused in order to succeed. Remember, the hashtag is Daybreak at Citizen TV Kenya, at Lilian_Muli. We're talking about the place of youth in campaigns and just looking at the resources required to mount a serious campaign. We're looking at money needed to print posters, to hire vehicles, as well as agents. Is this preventing the youth from seeking elective positions, Bashir?
I think, you know, one of the most expensive election campaigns is our country's campaign. You know, for you to actually win the position of just a member of county assembly, you will have to part with a lot of millions. And as we speak, some of actually those who are youthful aspirants who have actually made interest or declared their interest in vying for certain slots are now auguring or are now faced with the challenge of raising certain amount of money just for the sake of campaigning. And I think just on the flip side, we have had legislators who had no coin who were actually elected into our parliament. I think the likes of Murigi, there was a member of parliament from Embu. So we may not say all is lost just on the base of resource, but I think looking at our electoral cycle and our election campaigns and the history bit of it, resources have always been mobilized so that we're able to maybe transcend into our political lines. And actually that has been quite expensive. But I think we may not just say that there is this youthful political aspirant who cannot succeed just because he doesn't have enough cash. It is about the kind of strategy we employ. The reason as to why we're having this conversation today is because the political elites have studied the youth of our country. They have realized the best way to make them vote for you in, day out, every general election, make them suffer. Ensure that they do not get enough resources, ensure that they do not get empowered. And I think that strategy has worked for them. The people who can get themselves out of this particular puzzle is us, ourselves as the youth. It's about looking at how do we make sure that we elect good set of leaders. And actually, I think, Lilian, one of the issues as to why we normally advocate for youth electing good leaders into our parliament is because these are the people who would influence the policies that we have in our country. Let me just give an example. We have the Public Procurement Amendment law that was made that has had a lot of interest for the youth on paper. That law has actually been passed, but it is yet to be operationalized. How do you do that? You do that through, as a leader, it's about making follow-ups with a particular ministry to ensure that the youth get their lion's share. Look at the National Employment Act that has actually put in place the National Employment Authority. There are certain good laws that have actually been passed in our houses that are yet to be operationalized. It is about having in place good policies. Those policies are the things that will change our lives, and the best way to do that is elect good set of leaders into our houses.
The place of youth in campaigns, ladies, is it cash or strategy? And I really want to focus on this because according to Bashir, he feels that strategy will take you a long way. But when you're paired or when you're actually competing against seasoned politicians that have that financial muscle, where do you stand without the cash?
Lilian, first, before I answer that, I think I was cut short earlier. I had to respond to one thing. On the issue of Jubilee giving spaces to youth, I think I don't believe in anybody who has the consciousness to defend the Jubilee government on matters of the youth. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be any rude, but what I'm trying to say is it's easier to give positions. But the question here comes, as he said, effective of the laws. Who are you giving these positions to? What was the process that was used to give the youth in these positions? Is it nepotism? Is it doing things under the radar for the people that you know? You see,
Do you feel that the youth that actually have been given these positions do not deserve these positions?
I feel like that because not that I'm not supporting my fellow youth, but what has come out of those positions for the youth? Where did those positions place the youth of this country? Has any of them come out and given an opportunity to the youth that were left behind? I can be a leader and I'm given the chance to serve. But who am I serving? Am I serving myself and my stomach and my pockets? Or am I serving the youth that are there? On matters of strategy or cash, I'd like to say it's about strategy.
Let's go back to, let me just borrow from what you've just said in terms of the youth and the representation of their demographic when given these positions. Do you feel that they become mouthpieces when they're actually, are you representing your demographic in a different way from where you're seated?
I think, Lillian, it's easy to be a flower person or flower girl. Some of these politicians give chances to the youth so that they can control the youth behind them. It's just a colonialism strategy, honestly speaking, to colonize the youth and make sure they're not empowered by giving one of them a position so that they become your mouthpiece, so that they take over whatever you are unable to communicate because of your age bracket or because of your stand on the youth factors. And it depends with your competency, honestly. That is why certain leaders have an eye for youth who actually are competent enough to demographically change whatever their fellow youth are feeling. For example, we were the first people when the Kenya Kwanza coalition was formed. Me and the UDA Congress youth sat down with their principals, the deputy party leader and Musalia Mudavadi, told them, you know what, yes, we were serving on leagues in our youth, but right now there's a coalition. What is in for the youth in this coalition? That is where the Kenya Kwanza Youth Coalition came from. And honestly, if you observe well, I think the only leader in this country who gives spaces, I'll repeat this over and over again, not because I'm a supporter of Musalia, but because I'm a true patriotic Kenyan. What I'm going to say is the only leader in this country who gives chances to youth is Musalia Mudavadi. Observe the campaigns. The Kenya Kwanza campaigns right now, if you observe, the only person who, even when the schedule is a bit tight, who will call a youth who doesn't even have a position because he needs the voices of the youths heard by the other youths, is Musalia Mudavadi from his own minutes, even if it takes.
I'm sure other parties will argue differently because, I mean, the youth that are representative in those parties of course, would argue as you are arguing. But let's get into the issue of campaigns and financing and your thoughts around strategy or, you know, the financial input as well, making a huge difference, and whether this, in fact, bumps off the younger contenders.
Financial strategy is actually a bit of a problem for the youth right now. Most of us really want to go for these positions, but I think we're being held back because of the finance and what is put in the campaigns. As he said, our campaign is the most expensive campaign in this country. But what I'm also going to say is all hope is not lost. There are chances for us to get these seats. And there's a strategy that we can use as the youth of this country to ensure that we are on the table, that we are in these ballot boxes. It's not all about our money. We have certain leaders who have been elected without having the finance. And I think it's all about your strategy at the end of the day. It's how you talk to the community, because you cannot lead at the national level while you're not leading at the grassroots. And I think if you're competent enough as a youth, if you deserve that space, I don't see why finance should hold you back.
Now, during elections, younger aspirants are easily persuaded to step down for older aspirants who have money and more experience. It comes down to the issue of finance as well, comes down to the issue of cash as well. Let's look into issues around the younger, very potential aspirants and leaders actually stepping down and actually being asked to step down by seasoned politicians. And of course, this marrying into experience and finance, as well as the general attitude that you are not ready yet as the youth.
Let me say, Lillian, before even I answer that question, first of all, you know, when you say that ANC, Kenya Kwanza, is giving opportunity to young people to speak in rallies, they have to do that because their leaders have stolen Kenya's future, you know. So if the leaders in that coalition are the same ones who stole the cemetery, they've stolen everything, everywhere, now they have to purport to be, fronting young people. Do you want a leader who goes, steals the coffers and brings you handouts, or do you want the leader who focuses on the fundamentals of the economic bloc, you know, trying to put the economy on track so that jobs can come. And I think you can trust a leader who is able to focus on the fundamentals of the economy, as opposed to one who goes and grabs whatever is around and comes and throws it to you and puts you on camera. I think, you know, that is Kifunga Macho strategy, which wouldn't work for the younger generation. About what you said in terms of young people's participation, I'd like to say this. It's possible for young people to have what I would call a generational conspiracy, yeah? That together they put themselves in power because they can't put themselves in power. They just agree. You've seen border people coming together and determining, for example, the social culture of a particular place. So they can come together and they say, you know what, we're going to put one of us in power for this area so that when they go ahead there, they can do this and this and the other thing for us. For example, if young people were to come together in each and every ward in this country to be able to control the county assemblies of this country, they would be able to be in control of 370 billion shillings that is usually dispersed to the counties every financial year.
Bringing me back to the issue of civic education, do these young people even understand their constitutional rights? Because you cannot go for positions or you cannot preach ideologies that you do not even understand. And Bashir touched on the fact that civic education continues to be a major impediment to the electoral processes in this country. So even as you talk about the young people rallying behind each other and seeking these positions, are they aware? Are they even well versed with these issues that we're talking about?
I believe generic information is available because it's literally at their fingertips on their phones. This is not the times, 10 years ago when somebody had to come from somewhere to come and tell you something. The information is really literally on your phone all the time. So you can be able to sort of understand and pick up a lot of this information. What they do not have, though, is that way of structuring their thinking to be able to say, oh, if we use this opportunity this way, we could leverage it for ourselves in this manner, which is what I'm saying. If there could be, the community leaders that we are talking about who are able to tell the young people, wait, look, we have the numbers, we have the population down here to be able to control the county assembly, so that even if we don't get the governor position because of the, the cultural arithmetic around young people's experience and those kinds of things, we would be able to control the county assembly and thereby control these resources that are supposed to come to our communities. So I think young people can focus, and if you have enough of them in enough spaces, then they can be able to dictate. If they are in parliament, again, they'll be able to be in control of budgets, they'll be able to be in control of committees and in Bunge and those kinds of things. And I think that's why young people need to focus on, where they can be able to grab, pick up this power and be in control of certain elements of the governance in this country, especially the 370 billion that goes to the county governments.
Sure.
I think one of the things that, Lillian, I'm trying to pick out from this conversation is that we see that Lydia is in a way trying to propagate the Jubilee agenda, and I think that makes a lot of sense. You may have a government that, according to you, gives certain opportunities or considers opportunities for the youth. On the part of Amira, she realizes, or according to her, that the ANC and I think the UDM merger will be in the best interest of the youth. But I think, how do we go forward as a country or as the youth population? The thing is, in as much as we all talk about the youth coming together so that they make informed decisions together, I think that will have been the best thing. But that may not happen anytime soon. It is because the political leaders ensure that that does not happen. There are those modalities or procedures they have applied over time to make sure that the youth of this country remain fragmented.
Such as?
You see what they are doing? Is you splash some money towards the general election. You ensure that whenever there's an electoral cycle, the ones who suffer most are the youth. You ensure that the kind of education that we have in our country, that the literacy level remains, the literacy rate is more than the literacy rate. You ensure that whenever opportunities come up, you do not consider the youth. Now, I think the bedrock of the biggest problem is empowerment. They ensure that the youth are not empowered. That's the best strategy that they're applying. And for as long as that particular strategy is being employed, I think for us to get out of this problem will not be so easy for us. So I think the thing is, first thing, we need to own up and consider that the youth of our country, there's a strategy by the political elites to ensure that we are not coming together. First thing first, we need to speak out, come together, own up, or we need to own up the fact that we are having a problem, that we are faced with a problem. So once we consider that we are having a problem, how do we get out of this problem? That is actually the best strategy for us to employ. But I think that may not be so easy for us. The biggest issue, or the best way that you can easily see that that may not happen, is you realize that there's this certain youthful face maybe propagating ideologies of the ODM political party, that he will not want to entertain your ideas. So I think the whole aspect of trying to consider or giving room to divergent views doesn't happen with us. You realize that there's someone for ANC or maybe UDA or for Wiper who may not be interested in looking into the views of the fellow youth. And I think that is where the problem is also starting. Going forward, what do we do? We elect good leaders, not just the set of leaders that we're having in our houses at the moment. The set of leaders that we're having at the moment are the ones who are singing to the tunes of political demigods, those who are political top leaders. All they're doing is, we normally see them in funerals and political campaigns trying to maybe propagate the ideology of a certain political leader. That is not the set of leaders we are thinking of. The only set of leaders we need to think of is who, if he gets into parliament, will amend the necessary laws to give room to maybe youth tenders, to ensure that these tenders are done in a proper way, who will ensure that the procurement processes are done in a very proper way, who will ensure that the help loans that we as students have actually been relying upon as students in universities comes in good time, who will ensure that these particular facilities that are given by financial institutions are accessed by the youth. You see, Lillian, one of the issues that I can tell you is, as a legal practitioner, I normally deal with so many clients at the moment, but one of the problems that we have in our country is there's a lot of control of the financial flows of our country that is really affecting the youth. I think there are so many controls, trade barriers and tariffs, tax procedures that have actually been put in place to ensure that the youth are not able to easily do a few things. Let me just give an example. If today you wake up and you want to register a company, for you to run your errands or for you to benefit from, there are certain procedures, certain legal requirements that you must comply with, and those requirements need finances. And I think these are all the issues that we need to maybe do away with. And I think for me, as someone who belongs to the youthful bloc of our country, we own up that we are having a problem. We do consider that we are the only ones who can get ourselves out of this particular problem. And the best way to do this is we need to also consider or realize that we are fragmented, and there's a game or a strategy by the political elites. We need to forego that, come together, speak out, and we shall have a change.
Is there a strategy by the political elite to keep the youth at bay and to manage them so that, like you had mentioned earlier, they remain mouthpieces, and so that they sing to the tune of whatever political party embraces them?
I think I'm going to say that there is a strategy. Like, for example, right now, if you look at the nomination fees of most of the parties, they're giving half of whatever they're giving to the elder generation to the youth. For example, the MCA is, if it's a 50 for a person who is not a youth, it's 25,000 for a person who is a youth.
So there's a positive strategy.
There's a positive strategy, and there's also the negative strategy. Some parties might be using this strategy to show the public that the youth we are giving the youth chances to come and serve in these political positions, but the youth themselves are not willing to come. That is already dividing the youth and the public. You see, that is already trying to paint a picture to the public that the youth of this country are not competent. The youth of this country are not taking up their spaces.
Yeah.
And also, on terms of civic education, if I might just go back there, I think, as Lydia said, most of the information is on our phones. You just need to Google right away what you need. But I think what most of our youth are lacking right now is the experience to be in these political rooms, the experience to see how one should carry himself when it comes to politics. That's why we're having...
The experience might actually serve as as a disadvantage, because here are the youth saying, we want these opportunities, we want to be given these opportunities, we can do it. But the truth is, a lot of you are in consensus that those who have already been given those opportunities have failed.
I'm not saying that you really need to go and vie for this position to have the experience. Right now, if I'm given the chance to serve in a certain political position, or if I just decide to go and vie for women rep in Garissa, I can for a fact tell you I can do a better job than the current women rep who is there. Because I've already gotten the experience in my political space. I've already seen how a woman rep does her campaigns. I've already seen how a campaign strategy is funded. All I'm trying to say is this youth cannot just come out of nowhere in a night and decide, because I'm going to vie, allege themselves to a certain political party. Come to these political parties if you know that you have the vision to be in politics. Align yourself to a political party. Be included in that process. Join the Youth League, join the Women League, join whatever that is there. Join the structure of the party itself. Try to get the experience from those who are already in those positions. But you do not need experience to serve already. You just need to learn the experience from who are already there.
Hold that thought, Amira. Let's take your tweets and let's take a look at what our viewers are saying this morning. Okello Mwalimu, you're saying the same youth who elect inept and corrupt leaders, having accepted handouts from them, cannot be allowed to lament about lack of development. Anyone who fails to vote has no moral ground to complain about bad leadership. Your vote is your voice. Thanks for that, Okello. Abdirahman, you're saying the youth are the backbone of every society. They only remember election circles to vote for seasonal politicians back to their seats. Youth are used and not consulted. The youth don't know why all this happens. Mtuwetu syndrome is killing us. Wake up, youth. And by Mtuwetu, he means my person syndrome. For those of you who don't understand that. Moses Mbayo saying the problem with the youth is that they have the slogan Bora Uhai, which means life is better. They will just go and take money from whoever for survival and never vote. That is a case of handouts there. Amaganga Mustafa is saying affirmative action has given youth a platform to participate in politics, and it is time we explore the opportunities. Political parties are charging affordable nomination fees, and this is what Amira was talking about, this being a positive strategy by political parties, charging the youth less than, of course, their older counterparts. But what I'm getting from the feedback, guys, is that, and I don't know if these are youthful viewers or if they're older, but everybody seems to feel that the youth have failed themselves, that there is a constant state of whining, but essentially, you really can't be helped if you can't help yourself. At least that's what I'm getting from our viewers. So I'd like to get your thoughts on the fact that, for instance, if you do not vote, then you cannot expect change. So yes, we're talking about voter apathy, but then there are a lot of registered voters who can actually exercise their constitutional right to make a decision that will shape the direction this country will take. So your feedback on the comments from our viewers tonight, mostly around the voting and the fact that voter apathy is a creation that we're seeing on social media, that it should in fact not exist if we want to see change.
You've put it so well. The young people are failing themselves. Yeah, it is enough for young people to organize themselves. They can be able to do it and get the positions that they need to get to be able to reign power. Nobody is going to, let me tell you, Lillian, power, politics, first of all, is the art of, deciding how resources are going to be divided in the country. If young people want to control how resources are divided, then they have to gain control of the politics, they have to gain control of power. But is anybody going to give up their power to determine how resources are controlled and just give it to you and say, oh, nimetosheka kugawa, sasa, please, take the knife and go cut and decide how this national cake is divided? Nobody's going to do that. You have to step into the space and take it by organizing. Yeah, you have to organize, take up the space. For example, if you look at somebody like Malala of ANC, let me just talk about him because he's quite an impressive. He has quite an impressive journey of politics. Okay. You have seen him assert himself in Western Kenya. He started by organizing at the lower level as an MCA. He organized sufficiently to be able to be elected as a senator, and now you can see him nearly dictating the journey, the direction that ANC is taking. Look at people like Sakaja. Yeah, the kind of organizing that they did when they were younger, and over time they have profiled themselves as leaders. They are barely in their mid-30s, these leaders. So it is possible to step into the space. You just need to be a bit more serious. You can organize, and you have to put in the work that it takes to be able to take power into your hands. It's not a matter of saying, tunangoja huyu mheshimiwa wetu akuja tupange, mkingoja kukuja kupangwa mtapangwa tu, lakini hakuna mtu atapanga kazi, alafu akupatie kisu ukagawe keki. You have to organize yourselves, decide that you want to take back the knife to be able to cut that piece of the pie for yourselves. And so I would like to challenge young people to remember that they can do it. have a generational conspiracy at whatever level, at the constituency level, at the ward level, at a county level. Take the power, take the knife, split that cake the way you want to split it.
Lydia is talking about generational conspiracy. That's a term that I will carry with me all week. But then again, there's almost a sense from our viewers and the tweets that are coming in that the youth seem to have an imposter syndrome, and therefore they feel that they, in fact, do not have what it takes. And therefore, you know, what we're hearing in terms of them saying they're tired and there are no jobs is because innately they feel that they do not have what it takes. That is from our feedback.
I think what Lydia is trying to put across is right. Even what the viewers are saying, at some point it's honestly true. We're failing ourselves as youth to some point. And the generation conspiracy could have been a good way for us to go right now. But there are certain people in this country who make sure that doesn't happen. There are certain people, of course, right now in this room, the four of us are not going to be of the same mentality. The four of us are not going to stand up here and say, you know what, Lillian is a youth, let's go support her. I'll feel, why Lillian, why not me? There's that, politics is all about interest. But as much as we are saying that, I would like to urge the youth, let's unite. Let's create this generational understanding, this generational supportive of youth. Because as she has given an example of Malala, I think Malala has owned up, he has taken his space, and by the time he's out of his youth, he will be a very big place in this country. And that shows us that it's possible as the youth. But it's only possible if you have the right kind of leadership in your hands. You see, if I can shout all day from this studio, Lillian, I can shout all day in the streets of Nairobi and say, you know what, I'm taking up my space and I'm going to win this elective seat, or I'm going to do this. But one, have I worked on my grassroots? Malala did that. Two, do I have the leader who is going to hold my hand and tell me, you know what, you're very effective, I see how competent you are, and I'm going to give this chance. You take up your space, but at the same time, you cannot take up a space that someone else already has. So you need someone who is going to support you all through way. And that is what Malala has gotten from Salim Davadi.
Which is the issue of mentorship, yeah. And somebody here is saying the youth should stop propagating the political parties' ideas. Tumechoka, meaning we are tired, we have votes, but the kingpins are playing with our minds. We're only promised 10,000 jobs during campaigns, but only get 50. Surely it's either we wake up or wake up. So Dennis Collins here feels that the problem with the youth, whether they are analysts or whether they are in fact part of these political parties, is that they propagate the political parties' ideas as opposed to actually being a voice of reason and bringing in or injecting new energy into the ideologies that lie therein. Bashir.
You see, Lillian, one of the things that I actually want to pick out from the tweets that we have seen statements to do with affirmative action on the part of the youth. I think what we need to really consider is that the principle of affirmative action being accorded to the youth is not a privilege by the state. It is something given to us by our Constitution and Article 56, that the state is mandated to assert affirmative action to ensure that the youthful population is looked into, to ensure that their lives are improved. It is not a favor that needs to be asked from any political person. It is a right given to us, but that right is yet to put itself on, for us to appreciate it. We are yet to appreciate that particular right. And I think, Lillian, one of the things that I normally consider is that when you look at the 2007 violence, 2007-2008 report of those who are the perpetrators and those who are the victims, the biggest chunk of those were actually the youth again. That tells you that we are the biggest victims and we are the biggest perpetrators of the violence that we normally come across. We are again faced with an electoral cycle, with a general election again. Who knows? You know, we have been seeing what is happening with our country, with the kind of headlines on our papers as to whether or not we are prepared for the general election. You know, we are at a point whereby we are not talking about who we should vote for. We are asking ourselves as a country, shall we be stable enough come in the general election? Shall our youthful members be, participate in an electoral violence? Should that be the particular conversation that we're having at the moment? It should be about who are we going to vote for. That is exactly what we need to be discussing. But I think when I again look at the political parties that we're having at the moment, is we may see the faces of young minds in those political parties. But I think just before the general election, two things shall happen. Either we shall have political parties that shall field candidates for certain slots in the coming general election, or we shall have parties folding up each other, coming up with a coalition, putting together a coalition agreement. What shall be the stake or the interest of the youth in those particular coalition agreements, which we rarely see? I think it ends up being a very secretive document. And I think, Lillian, the other thing is, towards the election, we again ask ourselves, as we face the nomination exercise, let's say in a constituency like Quisero, would a youthful face be given an opportunity to participate or I mean to vie on an ANC ticket? Or shall we, I mean, we ask ourselves, Eldoret North maybe, in cases maybe, is a certain young mind going to be given an opportunity to vie on the UDA ticket? Because we know that our politics of our country is highly defined by the political parties we run through, especially not in certain certain regions. So we ask ourselves that even from the word go, even as we look at the nomination exercises that we are going to have very time soon, it is a wait and see game to see whether the youthful members shall be given the ticket to vie through maybe, via ODM, Jubilee, UD or ANC. That shall actually shape up a lot of things as to the kind of parliamentarians we are going to see. But I think for me, to be very honest with you, from the look of things, chances are very high that we shall see the political renegades, those top-class political elders who will be able to reach out to the young minds who shall be given to those particular tickets. And I think, again, on the same breath, the young minds shall be promised nomination slots, I think, past the general election. And I think we shall be having that same problem come general election. Once the general election is again over, we shall again proceed with that particular problem. What should we do? This is it. Whether, you audit this particular person, just audit this particular candidate, whether he vies on an independent party ticket or on a political party ticket, look at him as a person. In the event he's not given that particular political party ticket, still consider him using the independent party ticket. And I think one of the things that I'm picking out is we are taking up the example of Senator Cleophas Malala, the likes of Nairobi Senator Johnson Sakaja. I have been a voter in Langata constituency, I think, for the last 2 general elections. I am yet to see what those particular minds have done for the youth of our country. All we are smiling about is that they are now on the political podiums. They can be seen on the screens. We see Malala, I think, addressing public barazas. We again see Johnson Sakaja doing the same. We see Paul Ongili from Embakasi doing the same. We are not asking ourselves, what has Paul Ongili done for the youthful members of Embakasi East? So that as we go towards the general election, he's able to present to them, guys, this is what we have done. Yeah,
and I hear you. However, there are many other youthful persons in office that I am made to understand are doing incredibly well on the ground, but are just not as visible as perhaps some of these individuals that we see. And therefore, of course, that is for whatever constituent is led by who to decide. But I do hear you. There's a sense of the electorate feeling that the youthful leaders have failed them, and therefore just looking at the next general election skeptically because of not knowing what to expect when they see these same young persons on the ballot.
I think it's very unfair to
let Bashir finish, Lydia, and then...
you see, what I'm saying is, it is not bad to have youthful population forming the faces of our parliament and the county assembly. What we need to look at is the kind of youthful leaders that should form. It is not just about having people between 18 and 35-year-olds, because these people will be members of the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Association. They'll be able to consider certain interests of the youth. The speaker will be consulting them on a number of things. You need to look at not just the age, but the kind of person that you are electing. Is he the kind of a person who will give you an opportunity going forward? The reason why I'm just picking those examples, I think those are particular persons who we have seen on our screens. I'm just alluding to them for the sake of example. I'm not saying they're bad leaders. I'm just saying we have so many elders who are equally doing good jobs. We have so many over 65 politicians who are members of parliament who are doing incredibly well, to be honest. So we need to audit this person. Look at the person, not just at the age. Look at who will be having...
So essentially vote for...
the rightful leader.
Vote for the right leader, irrespective of their age, be it youth, be it an older person. It's about...
Lillian, let me set the record straight. When you have a candidate, first thing first, consider his youthful his youthfulness. Look at the youth factor, because we are looking at a projection whereby we want to ensure that we get ourselves out of the marginalized bracket. Look at him as a youthful mind. Fantastic. Once you cross that now, look at him on the basis or on the lens of what he shall do for you. Look at his past, audit him, look at his history. If he's the kind of a leader who will be able to impact your life, go for it. But if, I think on the alternative, you have an elder who will be able to impact your life, why not?
Right, Lydia, you were saying?
I just want to say that the young people who've been in the space have, I think, in my opinion, done a good job in terms of even pushing for delivery. If you think about the county assemblies right now, like you had talked about earlier, a lot of the MCAs are actually young people. And we have a good record of delivery by county governments at the counties. Development has advanced, roads, urban centers, agriculture, early childhood development. So we have to give credit also to those young people in those county assemblies, being able to hold the governors to account, being able to hold the CECs and the chief officers to account in those counties. And like you said, Lillian, it's not always that these young people who are doing incredibly well everywhere, given the profile. And in fact, that's why we appreciate Citizen TV, and the Royal Media Services, because you can tell that there's a deliberate intent by this particular media house to really put young people, give a platform even to people like ourselves, who are not necessarily out there, famous and all that. So that is really, really appreciated. And those are the kinds of things we want to see, Citizen, Nation, the newspapers, pull some of these young people and profile them. For other young people to be able to see themselves represented and say, oh, actually, that person looks just like me, they speak just like me, they think just like me, their dreams that I'm having, the vision that I have for my community, that person looks like they are exactly like me, so I think I can actually do it. And so having even panels like this, Lillian, is it's really part of the process of profiling new leadership in this country, and it is really, really appreciated.
And I think also, Lillian, in terms of the representation and putting competent voters, I think what Bashir was talking about is the same thing that I mentioned earlier. How competent are these leaders that we're putting there? And if we feel we need to judge their competence as leaders, not all of us are going to serve in the elective positions of this country. It doesn't fit. We are too many for us to serve in those positions. What we can do, if the youth of Kakamega do not sit down, Cleophas Malala, negotiate their positions. You're a youthful person. What are you bringing to the table for us? If you're giving us, I think at this point, the youth of this country should realize you are the key holders. The vote that you have is actually a negotiation pass. If you do not negotiate with Malala on certain things, before you even cast that vote, I don't see why you should blame him on him not serving well as a youth. Moving from that, I think I'd like to take us back to someone who said the youth are propagating the party ideologies. I really don't think at this point we need to illegalize and criminalize propagating party ideas. What matters is what party are you aligning yourself with? What party idea are you propagating? In that party that you're, of course, so many of us are in these parties because we believe in the leaders. We believe in their ideas, you see. If it's about economy, that is why I went to Musalia, because I believe he's the one who has been talking about economy ever since he joined politics. Now, do I have a voice in that party? Right. Do I have a voice to run? Let me just finish a minute. Do I have a voice to negotiate for the youth in that particular party? Right. And I think right now, the reason as to why we're seeing a lot of youth who are not voting or a voter apathy, we need to consider there's a moral decay in our youth right now. I don't think the youth of this country are ready to speak about that for now. There's a whole lot of moral decay in terms of taking handouts, in terms of drug abuses. And I think as much as we are to held accountable for that, the government of this country has pushed us to the wall, and that is why the youth are having such issues. If you are a public leader, a renowned person in this country, and you come on TV and tell this youth that if you vote for me, I'm going to give you 6,000 per month, that is an official handout. What about the other unofficial handouts that you're giving so that you buy the votes of this youth, you see? So the moral decay, it has pushed the youth of this country to a level where we are only seen as political mechanics. We are only seen as people who can vote with that money. And that is why most of the leaders are complaining right now. Let's see if we do away with the leaders who are easily giving out handouts and see if this youth do not vote. And they will vote.
And I want us to take the comments of our viewers as we begin to wind up, and I'll avoid the ones that we've touched on, but somebody here is saying youth have narrow understanding of political participation, focused on voting or running for office rather than engaging in policy debates. Somebody here is talking about inferiority complex amongst the youth. I won't touch on that. But very importantly, somebody here is saying, and this is Governor the Dreamer, is saying political parties have consistently failed to support and or nominate women for critical positions, despite a focus on being gender inclusive within their party manifest. I think this is the every electioneer narrative about flower girls and women being given lesser positions because of whatever reasons political parties feel that they should give women lesser positions. Obviously, somebody here also talking about the problem is that, this is Oliver Bill, you're saying the problem we have is that a majority of youth have fresh and great ideas for this country, but are not interested in politics. And finally, James Mwadegu, you're saying, but the same youth are unfortunately abused to ignite violence during and after disputed polls. Unfortunately, the youth also turn out in small numbers to vote. So going back into campaigns, it is the youth that are there. And then when it comes to the Fujo, it is the youth as well that are contracted to engage in this. So there's a lot that has been said there, but I think very important, let's touch on the gender inclusive party manifests and the fact that our viewers are feeling, and this is actually interestingly from a man, he feels that women are conveniently left out of critical positions.
I think I'm going to applaud.
I'd like to have the gentleman, just for the lack of bias. I'd like to get his thoughts on that, and then I'll have you ladies
I think
contribute.
Indeed, Lillian, when you look at the Constitution and the two-third gender principle that was deliberately inserted in Article 27, that has been left out. And the whole idea was to ensure that women are properly included in our systems, in our political processes, and in positions, not just in the political positions, but all-round positions. But that is not happening. I think even as we talk about the youth and youth marginalization, it is time for the women of our good country to stand up, see that they also form a huge chunk of population. Our good ladies are enjoying two positions. You can be youth as a woman, and you're again a lady. So I think you need to consider both things. Even as you make your rightful decisions in terms of voting the person you want to vote for, you are still within the youthful bracket. Consider the youthful issue. Also consider the women bit of it in terms of Article 27. Because we have a country and a government that has decided not to fulfill the agendas of Article 27 with respect to the two-third gender law. We have seen the same being flawed in our houses. This is the same parliament that has passed laws that were there to increase the taxes and tax burden on Kenyans. But they were not wise enough to pass laws that would fulfill Article 27. But I think, be that as it may, I also would wish to maybe get the view of ANC with respect to how they plan for women, and also I can see Lydia is in a way holding brief for Jubilee.
So if I may start, I think I'll say it's true. There's a gender bias in our political spaces. And it's actually even harder if you're a youth and you're a woman. And I'll say that is maybe because this is a society made of men by men for men. You see, it's really hard to make your space out there. But it's not impossible. There's a lot of things that are hard. I see most of the times we bring these women into the politics. In politics, I don't really believe you have to start up from being an MP out of nowhere, just from school. You really need to be involved in this policy and decision-making process from a young age, from the leagues and all that stuff, from young decision table makings. But if we, as a youth league, some of the times we bring women in these curriculums, and we bring them to take part in these political spaces. But you find out they're more ambitious. You find out they're more I don't know how to put it. They feel like they want more, and that is not a problem, but the problem comes in where they feel like you are not giving them that by giving them the space. They want to explore other options of having these spaces, and that may even include their bodies. So when you allow someone to take advantage of you for a certain thing, and you feel like your brains and your articulation and your competency cannot give you that, you'll always be a run over. And some of the times you even feel 90% of the women who are brought into politics are taken advantage of, are used by men because they are not seeing that these men don't want to empower them. And when these opportunities come out, you might have a certain political party that has positions for nominated women. Like for example, if I just take an example, there's a very young woman, I think she's within her 25 from Kakamega. She was nominated by ANC. But when we were in that room, I think out of the 15 ladies that were in that room, she was the only one who did not try to explore other options. She used her brains, she used her competency, and she used her loyalty. And I think in politics, loyalty buys you a lot. Who are you loyal to? If you believe in these leaders' ideas, for example, Musalia Mudavadi. If Musalia Mudavadi sees that I believe in his ideas, I've been fighting for his ideas for the last, I don't know how many years. I don't see why he will not nominate me. I don't see why, as a woman, I will not get that opportunity of being nominated and given to a man who has just come out of nowhere. I think for the ANC party, it doesn't work like that. But there's a lot of gender biases in our society, and that is not even just in politics. It cuts across in all our society.
Right, and we're closing now. So in terms of your parting shots as we close this morning's show, we've touched a lot, and my take home from our conversation this morning, Lydia, you're talking about a generational conspiracy being perhaps a solution that could put an end to the narrative of the youth holding back. Bashir feels that what is important is to vote for a good leader, irrespective of whether they're youthful or not. What is important is to actually consider who this person that you're voting for is. And then, of course, just looking at the issue, as Amira puts it, of the culture of politics in Kenya not being very conducive for women and the youth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take your thoughts as we close on whether the youth factor could be a turning point for Kenyan politics. We are 6 months to the August poll, so very briefly, as we close, just your individual thoughts on whether the youth actually will transform the face of politics in this country.
I think before I even talk about this parting shot, I wanted to talk about two things. One, I think Kenya Kwanza cannot talk about handouts because we know that they're the ones who started the culture of handouts about 4 years ago.
We cannot reduce this conversation to
number two.
both your
but it's good to set the record straight. This is national television. It's good to set the record straight.
But that is just your record. It's not the record of the Kenyan
promised by the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga is not a handout.
It's an official handout. That remains a fact.
It is what is called support for vulnerable people. We have seen.
But we're not vulnerable. We're youth and we're capable and we're energetic.
Amira, let's have finish. You will have your say.
Thank you. It is.
So you don't think that is a handout?
It is not a handout.
All of this morning we've been talking about the culture of handouts.
There is a global convergence that societies have to protect the most vulnerable people. There's a whole SDG, the Millennial Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, which says you should not leave anybody behind. And Lillian, there are people who are so poor. Lillian, they cannot afford a meal. They cannot afford anything. They have children who are malnutrited because they cannot afford the daily basic nutritional, requirements for their children. And those are the people who are going to be protected. This is a social protection policy where you really do not leave the most vulnerable behind. So I think it's really wrong to mischaracterize it as a handout. It will go to the most vulnerable, where there are families who have no single income, perhaps they're families where there are people with disability, they cannot earn an income, and this is so important for us not to mischaracterize that policy as a handout. Handouts, we know where they are. They are in Kenya Kwanza, and they are issued in rallies, they are issued in churches, and I think it is important for us to separate those two issues. As my parting shot, I'd like to say, speak on the issue of women leadership, Lillian. We have seen that women are not making it to the very top of leadership, especially when it comes to the political space. That is where the challenge is. That we are okay with women leading in business, we are happy with women in media, we seem to be very comfortable even with women now in the judiciary, but there seems to be a bit of a gridlock when it comes to women taking up power at the top level in the political space. That is where the challenge is, and that is why it is so important for Kenyans right now to include a consideration for women, especially who are running for governors, to begin to ask their leaders who are running for governor to have an alternate gender, candidate. We need to see the presidential candidates of Ruto and Raila and whoever else is running for president, is still not clear where Oka is, that they have deputy presidential candidates who are of the opposite gender. And I think we'll begin to see progress on that because we need women at the very top of decision making. Thank you, Lilian.
Sure.
I think for me, my parting shot is that my message to the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the political parties, ourselves here, the three of us, and every single Kenyan, I think we need to undertake a serious civic education. In Kiswahili, there's this thing called vijana kugutuka, ensuring that they wake up. How do we wake up? That we all understand the essence of taking part in an exercise that will take place in our country within the next 6 months. So I think my message is all of us have a key role to play. Let us pass this good message to each and every youth that if you have the voter registration card, kindly partake in that particular election. Let us not be left out. If we get left out, we are living our dreams out in the next 5 years to come. I know for sure that we shall again be promised 2 million jobs, 3 million jobs. It is for us to see, audit, look at those manifestos, make the rightful decisions. But from here, I think for me as a person, I shall really undertake the whole aspect of civic education, so that as we once we are past the general election, again, we do not find ourselves with a report that the youth of our country did not participate in the electoral process. So I think my message to all of us is let us really undertake a serious civic education, ensure that each and every young mind is able to undertake in that political process. Let us not despair. All is not lost.
First of all, Lilian, I'd like to say thank you for having us. This was such a great platform. Before I say my parting shot, I think I'd like to reply to Lydia. I think I see her laughing already. The youth are not vulnerable. The youth of this country are the key to these political positions. If the youth decide not to vote for Raila Amolo Odinga, nobody can put him in power, you see? If the 6,000 shillings is not an official handout, I don't see why there's a vulnerable community that needs to receive this money. The reason there's the hunger, the reason there's malnutrition, the reason there's a lack of school fees in this country, the reason why we have an economic collapse is because of the Jubilee government and the debts that it has put in this country. So I don't see why we need to preach the rights and the wrongs of the Jubilee government. The Jubilee government has failed us. The Azimio government is going to fail us if its plan is to give 6,000 stipend to youths.
Okay, and you
so what I'm going to say,
what
I'm going to say is my parting shot is all hope is not lost for the youth of this country. Please let's turn out and vote. Let's take our spaces. To the women, there's biases in our societies. There's a lot of lack of spaces for women in our societies and in our political spaces. But I think we need to change that. Women, especially youth women, need to come out and take your spaces. For example, I think I'll be probably, if eligible by 2032, I'm going to vie as president of this country. And I don't see why that should stop me. If I'm competent enough, if I can give the people of this country what they need, the woman factor should be out of its space. So thank you so much, Lilian, for having us, and let's come out and vote.
I thank you so much for your contributions in studio this morning. I was joined by Amira Abdullahi, National Chair, ANC Youth League. Also with us in studio was Suleiman Bashir. He is an advocate and he was also a contributor in this morning's conversation. And also with us this morning was Lydia Mathia, Youth Development Expert. We are closing now. My name is Lilian Muli, but we're handing over now to DJ Roy T-Boy and Shatta Boy as they take over the entertainment section this morning. We thank you so much for your time. Keep it Citizen TV. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.